welcome to the Newsmakers Review the Week with me, Imran Gata, when we look back at the best of the past 7 days here on the show. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll take you through the stories we debated and scrutinized. It was the week where we discussed the future of oil, the week that saw tensions between Middle Eastern rivals Saudi Arabia and Iran reach boiling point, that saw just how polarized the US is over their guns, and the week that saw France mark a year since the Charlie Hebdo attacks. In 2015, oil prices dropped by nearly a third. Just a week into 2016, and already the oil markets were looking volatile. Now, deepening tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran, both OPEC members, could further complicate prices in 2016. On Monday, our newsmaker was the stuff the global economy hinges on, oil. Sandra Gatman had this report.
The price of oil has been sliding to all-time lows again and again. With the world economy slowing, demand for the stuff feeding the machine has weakened too. Cheap oil means more cash for consumers at the pump. Countries thirsty for economic growth have benefited too, including much of the ailing Eurozone. But oil exporters are feeling the pain. In 2012, a barrel of oil cost $125. 6 months ago, the price dipped to $60. Today, the price of oil has dropped to $37 a barrel. That's meant a huge loss in revenue for oil exporters, especially those with big budget deficits. For the first time ever, the world's biggest oil producer, Saudi Arabia, was forced to slash its spending next year. The move sent petrochemical stocks plummeting. Many critics accuse Saudi Arabia of trying to cut out competition, particularly from the US, by keeping up cheap production.
If you look at the Saudi economy as a whole, it is suffering. They have a very good sovereign rating, so they're reaching out to the wider debt markets, and they're keeping themselves going. They're dipping into their forex reserves. The question is, who blinks first? And I think the U.S. producers would blink first because it's primarily private enterprise, whereas in Saudi Arabia's case, it's Aramco is a big NOC which is backing them.
Russia is also in trouble. For every dollar fall in the oil price, the oil giant loses about $2 billion in revenue. And despite sitting on the world's largest reserves, Venezuela's heavy oil is too expensive to refine, and its economy is already headed toward near collapse. Then there's Iran, preparing to ramp up its exports next year thanks to a lifting of Western sanctions. That could lead to oversupply and even weaker prices. The global oil glut may get worse. This month, the U.S. made a historic decision to lift a 40-year export ban. But while cheap shale gas extracted through fracking has kept up domestic supply, North American producers have struggled to survive low prices. And in 2015, 36 oil companies filed for bankruptcy.
A lot will depend on the direction of the US dollar. A lot will depend on how far and how fast production corrects. And thirdly, how many people will survive. Now, oil is lower for longer. So how many producers can survive lower for longer? That will be the game in 2016.
With much of the struggling industry slamming the brakes on oil exploration projects, supply will tighten and prices will eventually climb. The trillion-dollar question is when. Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers.
On Monday, I spoke to Dirk Loorbach. He's director of the Dutch Institute for Transitions in Rotterdam. This is what he had to say when I asked him if the idea of renewable energy is still some way off becoming a reality.
Well, there are certainly areas of the economy where fossils will stay dominant and the preferred option for long, like aviation, like shipping, like the chemical industry. But certainly in mobility and in electricity, renewable alternatives are becoming quickly a viable alternative.
On Tuesday, the Newsmakers' Jerome Evans filed this report on the aftermath of the diplomatic fallout between Middle Eastern superpowers Iran and Saudi Arabia, just days after Saudi's execution of Shia cleric Nimr al-Nimr.
Two regional powers that can't seem to get along. Both want to become the preeminent country in the Middle East. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the region's biggest oil producer with the largest economy. More than 80% of the people there are Sunni Muslims, including the ruling royal family. They're allied to Israel and the United States. And across the Gulf is Iran, the region's second biggest oil producer with the second largest economy. More than 90% of the population is Shia Muslim, including the clerics who rule the country. In the past, they threatened to destroy Israel and the United States with nuclear weapons. But the balance of power could be about to shift. Iran could be in for a $100 billion windfall as it abandons its nuclear ambitions in exchange for the lifting of sanctions and opening up of international trade. The fallout from Saudi's execution of Shia cleric Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr has been swift and wide-ranging.
The Saudi royal family, by executing Sheikh Nimr, opened the gates of hell for their rule and their power.
The dispute between Saudi Arabia and Iran rippled across the region, driving up oil prices and threatening to widen the sectarian divide in the Middle East. The rift between Sunni and Shia Muslims in the Middle East runs like a tectonic fault line along what Jordan's King Abdullah called the Shia Crescent. It starts in Lebanon in the north and curves through Syria and Iraq to the Gulf and Iran. In politics, as in war, sides are often chosen along sectarian lines. The conflict in Yemen is just the latest example where Iran and Saudi are accused of backing rival armies in a proxy war. In 1979, modern Iran was founded when the Islamic Revolution deposed the monarchy of the Shah. Less than a year later, Saudi Arabia and its allies funded Saddam Hussein's invasion of Iran. During Lebanon's 15-year civil war, Iran supported Hezbollah in its fight against Saudi-backed militias. And in almost 5 years of war in Syria, Iran is said to have spent up to $20 billion propping up Bashar al-Assad, while Saudi funds a loose coalition of his enemies. Saudi and Iran were both involved in international peace talks aimed at ending the Syrian war. They're scheduled for later this month. Those talks now look uncertain. Saudi and some allies have suspended diplomatic ties with Iran, commercial links and travel are being cut, and Iran accuses Saudi of ratcheting up tensions on purpose to further its own political agenda. Against this backdrop of conflict, hopes that peace can be found in Syria are fading fast. Jerome Evans, The Newsmakers.
Tuesday's newsmaker was Saudi Arabia. To discuss the row that played out this week between Riyadh and Tehran, I was joined from Bahrain by Abdul Latif Al-Mulhim, a columnist for Arab News and Al-Yawm newspaper. In the US was Ali Al-Ahmed, a scholar from the Institute for Gulf Affairs, and in Tehran was the political analyst Imad Abshinas. Have a look at how the debate played out.
Well, I have two things to add. First of all, as far as the Shia in Saudi Arabia, they are treated like the other citizens, the Sunnis, and many of my, technically all my friends and classmates are holding top positions in the military, in Aramco, and as a matter of fact, two of my classmates are in the Shura Council. And as far as the Iranian attack on the Saudi embassy in Tehran. I'm not finished yet. For the attack on the embassy in Tehran, this is not the first time that the Iranians have attacked foreign embassies. They have attacked American embassies, British embassies, and in the past. As far as positions for the Shia, they are holding positions that, frankly, I would even dream of. What many people are playing is simply playing the sectarian divide for their own good. I mean, Iran are using a few of the Shiites in Saudi Arabia, and they're very few, to simply promote violence in the kingdom. And Nimr al-Nimr was technically everything about the government that was negative. He had said it. At the same time, when he was being investigated,
do you believe he deserved to be killed?
Well, to me personally, according to what he had been done in his hometown, yes, he deserved. And at the same time, when he was being investigated, his wife being treated on the expenses of the Saudi government, and his relatives and family members are being sent to the best schools in the United States. We have nothing. I mean, technically, I have, childhood friends who are Shia, and I still cherish and respect their friendship to this day.
Ali Al-Ahmed Abdulatif has Shia friends.
This is the typical American whites when they said, "Oh, I'm not racist. My mailman is black." So look, let's be honest here. This is, the Saudi government is a racist, sectarian government. This is not like a new discovery. Everybody knows it. The fact that there is not a single Shia mayor in the country, that tells you, a lot. That the fact that the top religious leaders, the Saudi government, king appointed, say that the Shia are the enemies and they should be wiped out. The problem is the Saudi government, an absolute monarchy, cannot fulfill the needs of its people, so it must export its problems.
Wednesday's newsmaker was Barack Obama, just a day after the U.S. president tearfully said he'd seen too many mass shootings and was going to sidestep Congress to bring in new gun controls. The newsmaker's Nicole Johnston had this report.
In America, the right to bear arms is enshrined in the Constitution.
One of the worst massacres in U.S. history.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
There are almost as many firearms as there are people in the U.S.
I don't want anyone telling me I can't have something that I am really entitled to have.
Gun violence and mass killings have devastated families, spreading fear and shock across communities.
On Friday, December 14th, I put 2 children on the bus and only one came home. I pray that no mother, father, grandparent, or caregiver of children ever have to go through this pain.
We are approaching a moment that none of us will forget.
Unfortunately, we had a very tragic incident this morning
when the peacefulness of our community was shattered.
The headlines confront the violence that happens all too often. President Barack Obama repeatedly condemned the killings, and then Sandy Hook happened.
Please join us now in a moment of silence.
In December 2012, the school witnessed one of the worst mass shootings in US history. 20-year-old Adam Lanza murdered his mother, then set off for the school as if going to war. Armed with a military-style assault rifle, he shot dead 20 children and 6 teachers before killing himself.
The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old.
President Obama then pushed for tougher background checks on people who buy guns. and a ban on the sale of certain assault weapons. But the opposition was strong.
Never fight if you can avoid it. But when you must fight, don't lose.
The National Rifle Association is the most powerful gun lobby in the world. It campaigned against any changes to America's gun laws. And for decades, it's had a grip on the Republican Party.
I call on Congress today to act immediately to appropriate whatever is necessary to put armed police officers in every single school in this nation.
The debate was bitter, polarized, and intense.
How many more? How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters? How many more street corners?
Enough. Enough. Enough.
Obama decided it was enough too. On Tuesday, he announced stricter gun regulations that he plans to impose without the approval of Congress. They include tougher background checks on potential gun owners. He also recalled the shooting at the Sandy Hook Primary School.
Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
But some people have called the changes modest, aimed at clarifying and enforcing the law rather than coming up with tough new regulations. It's too early to say what, if any, impact they will have, and whether they can really stop or even reduce the number of mass killings. Nicole Johnston, The Newsmakers.
Guns are perhaps one of the most politically polarizing issues in the US. And that was certainly played out on Wednesday's edition of The Newsmakers. Joining me was John Lott, author of the book More Guns, Less Crime, and Leah Barrett from New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. Now, take a look at what happened when I asked Leah why Obama is sidestepping Congress.
Because Congress is not doing anything. They've done nothing since 2013. They've done nothing since 1993. In fact, they've loosened our federal gun laws. They've starved the ATF of resources. They've prohibited federal funding for gun violence research. They've granted immunity from lawsuits to gun manufacturers. You know, this is ridiculous. This is a Congress that is completely in the pocket of the NRA. And let's be clear about one thing. The National Rifle Association, the corporate gun lobby, only wants one thing. They want to sell more guns, and they don't care to whom they sell those guns. They're clearly dependent on the criminal market for illegal firearms. They're getting money from that, and they don't want to see that spigot shut off.
Okay. John...
They're doing it for profit. They are an industry that is soaked in the blood of the American people.
You made the point.
And 90% of Americans want background checks on all gun sales. 90%. The NRA does not speak for all Americans. They don't even speak for all gun owners.
One thing just to keep in mind...
John, I want a quick response, please, because we're running out of time. We've got about 2 minutes left.
Right. Well, look, Americans use guns defensively to stop violent crime about 2 million times a year. That's about 4 to 5 times more frequently than guns are used in the commission of crime.
Is it still
and
lost
what you
on your hard
have to
drive?
worry about here
Where's the data,
is
John?
that when you go and you pass these rules, are they primarily going to stop law-abiding good citizens from being able to go and stop
Your data
themselves?
doesn't
My
exist.
research and the research of others indicate that the people who benefit the most from owning guns are law-abiding, poor blacks who live in high-crime urban areas. A person on the other side may believe that the president should do something. That's fine, but he should follow the law. If he has a case to make, he should try to make it.
That's exactly what he's
Instead,
doing. He's enforcing the law. He's making good on
making
Congress's
up the rules as he goes along is not
by extending
part of the
background
Constitution. The
checks
problem
to
is
people
that the
engaged in the
president's
business of selling
rules
firearms
are actually going to be
the internet,
endangering people's
like
lives.
people who
More
profit
people
at gun
are
shows
going
who
to
make
die.
their livelihood from selling AR-15s and handguns to the criminal element.
Thursday marked a year to the day since two brothers stormed the offices of French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo and opened fire. 12 people, many of them the magazine's cartoonists, were shot dead. In the wake of the attack, the magazine was held up as a symbol for free speech. It was also accused of having a racist agenda and of Islamophobia that prompted a global discussion over how far is too far. Duncan Crawford filed this report.
It was an attack that shocked a nation. Terror in the heart of Paris. The murders at Charlie Hebdo turned the magazine into a global symbol for free speech. And a year on, France is still coming to terms with the attacks. They were murdered for drawing cartoons. 11 people gunned down at the headquarters of Charlie Hebdo, many of them cartoonists. The satirical magazine had previously published a caricature of the Prophet Muhammad. Outside, the gunman also shot dead a policeman. Sharif and Saeed Kouachi had links to Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Witnesses said the brothers shouted that they were avenging the Prophet as they carried out their murderous rampage. Over the next 2 days, France mounted a huge security operation. Another gunman, Amadi Koulibaly, murdered a policewoman and killed 4 hostages at a Jewish supermarket. The attacks led to an outpouring of grief. Je suis Charlie, I am Charlie, became a rallying cry. World leaders joined the French president and millions of others on the streets of Paris in a global display of unity and solidarity. For staff at the magazine, it was overwhelming. But elsewhere, there was outrage. In Afghanistan, Pakistan, and other countries, protesters denounced the magazine. Some considered the attacks justified. A year on, and France still grieves its dead. But Charlie Hebdo carries on and continues to be controversial. The killer is still out there, the magazine says, alongside a picture of God with a rifle. 1 million copies of the anniversary edition have been printed. The main target of its satire is still organised religion.
It's a symbol. It's a symbol of democracy, of freedom of expression that we care about. We are lucky in France to still have that.
Like last year, I came to buy it because of the attacks and to support the families. It's dark humor, but it does make me laugh.
This week, a series of events have honoured those who died in the attacks. But France still faces a major terror threat. Last November, it was again attacked, and more than 130 people died. People know they are a target, and the country fears more attacks. Duncan Crawford, The Newsmakers.
Our newsmaker on Thursday was Charlie Hebdo. Well, joining me on the program to discuss if there should be a limit to free speech was Max Blumenthal, a co-producer of the documentary film Je ne suis pas Charlie, and Carl Sharrow, who is himself a satirist. Take a look at the opposing points of view they both had on the issue.
They were not equal opportunity offenders, and Riss recently admitted that his magazine has become obsessed with Islam because that's what sells and that's what cashes in. That's what gets Riss, a better return on the 70% of the shares he owns of this magazine.
But you see, this is the problem here. This is the problem here. You're trying to determine whether Charlie Hebdo has a right to free speech based on what you think is the right thing for it to publish.
No, I'm critiquing Charlie Hebdo.
That is not how the principle of free speech operates. If we go back to the culture wars in America about outwards like Piss Christs or the Virgin Mary dung, that I would definitely stand with the right of people to offend Christians with these representations. We shouldn't be selective about these things. We can't establish the freedom of speech based on the content that you deem desirable. That is not how free speech operates.
Strongly put. We don't have much time. Let's get a final response from Max to that from Carl.
I'm not calling, once again, I'm not calling for the government to censor Charlie Hebdo. I'm saying their speech is terrible. Their speech is Islamophobic. Their speech is sadistic, and they're not brave. These satirists are not brave.
They're about as brave as an Israeli pilot bombing refugee camps from 1,000 miles up with no chance for the other side to respond. And what we're missing here is that there is a power imbalance in French society. Charlie Hebdo and its neoconservative supporters have the power. They have the power, and the non-Charlies who are being crushed, whose speech is actually being crushed by the violence of the French state, have no power.
Okay.
So this isn't about free speech being answered
and
with
the power
more free
can be
speech.
restored by allowing people the freedom to express themselves. This is the principle where you're contradicting
I'll allow that
yourself.
to be the final word because we have
want people to be
time.
able to express themselves.
Sure. That was the week that was. From the future of oil to President Obama's tears over gun violence, from the growing tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran to the Charlie Hebdo anniversary, we debated and analyzed the week's headlines. Next week, we'll look at whether Pakistan is serious about dealing with the Taliban threat, and the Newsmakers' Duncan Crawford will be in Tunisia, where he'll be reporting on the approaching 5-year anniversary of the Jasmine Revolution. You've been watching this edition of the Newsmakers Review the Week with me, Imran Garta. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.